This is ABC 13 Eyewitness News at 9 p.m. on CW 39. Now, breaking news.
No peace! No peace!
Now you can also see a line of police officers here. Most of them are on their motorcycle.
You know, we need to stand up against injustice and, you know, stand with our black brothers and sisters.
No peace! No peace!
The crowd has doubled in size since we have been here. It's huge. It's impressive.
Take me off my neck! Take me off my neck!
I believe that people will see that as we join together and that the energy builds. There's something about that. It's an impact. We feel this energy that as we get educated, we can see a hope.
How old are you, and tell me why you came out?
13.
Why are you here today?
I'm here for to represent George Floyd.
George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd!
You're looking live as hundreds of thousands of people march from Discovery Green to Houston City Hall in support of George Floyd.
All the way back down toward the hotel down there and Discovery Green. You can see it for yourself. Massive crowd, more than 20,000 people.
This country declared a war on poverty. We declared a war on drugs. We declared a war on cancer. It's time to declare a war on racism.
It is time for a revolution of change, for the dignity of all of us, no matter what our color.
But today, it's about lifting up the family of George Floyd. Say his name.
George Floyd.
Say his name.
George Floyd.
It's about lifting up the name of George Floyd.
And good evening to you. I'm Elisa Rivas. We begin with breaking news tonight. Sky Eye 13 live over a crowd of protesters in downtown Houston. Let's take a look to downtown, where the streets are mainly empty compared to what we saw throughout hours this afternoon. People began gathering about an hour before the protest was set to begin in Discovery Green around 2 o'clock this afternoon. There are still people there tonight as the Houston Police Department deals with those that are in the crowd and still are out on the street tonight. So we begin outside the George R. Brown Convention Center, where police have just clashed with dozens of people that are still there. ABC 13's Marla Carter is live there right now, and she has the very latest.
That's right, Elisa. We have seen the line of police officers basically come from the street where protesters were now to the street. So all the protesters are now out of the street. We see the mounted patrol. We've also seen state troopers as well out here. And really what happened is all the protesters that were in the street, which was a very large crowd, then went into Discovery Green, into the park area. And we now hear them, if you can see them, they're kind of chanting and walking away from the park area. So toward the Hilton. So, and we're at GRB right now, just to give you an idea where they are. And so they're kind of headed in that direction. But really, they were trying, officers trying, of course, to defuse the situation out here. There were water bottles thrown at them. And they've stood the line this entire evening. But, you know, it didn't start out this way. It was a very peaceful situation with actually 60,000 people came out here today, all with a message of unity, with a message of change. In fact, we talked to one young protester today who was so very moved by the experience out here, as so many were, that he took a moment to kneel. Take a listen to him. Well, that young man, he was actually saying that he was so moved, he was so touched, he was so compelled to take a knee. And we heard from so many people. I actually spoke with a woman earlier today, and she was brought to tears by what she experienced. It was very moving for her. And again, justice is what people were seeking for George Floyd, but also just a message of unity, a message of diversity, and a message of expression. And that was a big message that was certainly relayed today. But back out here live, you can see officers continuing to move really along the lines it appears that those protesters were going. They have since cleared the area of the park that they were standing in. There's no longer protesters there, but the officers kind of going alongside them. And more officers have come out due to this situation as well. So we're going to keep on monitoring for you and bring you any updates we get. Reporting live from downtown, Marla Carter, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Marla, thank you. And in some instances, at least, tensions do remain high between protesters and police. So now let's check in downtown with Ted Oberg. Ted, exactly what is your location and what are you seeing from where you are tonight?
Yeah, Lisa, not far from where Marla is. In fact, probably just a couple hundred yards, but on the other side of the police line. And here you can see that the faces of police officers as they hold their ground here. You know, one of the things that Chief Acevedo told us yesterday in an interview, he said that you can see in the faces of really what the young 20-something and 30-something officers in the senior ranks who are doing a pretty strong job out here, sometimes in the face of their own fear, but showing some restraint as far as what they're doing. They clearly could have cleared these streets a little bit earlier. Many of them have zip ties to arrest protesters. We saw that Friday, but they have held their ground and now appear to be going into the park to clear the park out. And that's as far as they wanted to go. That light you just saw, by the way, from the helicopter. Will, come here just a sec before the police officers move us out. I'd been talking to Will just a minute ago. How long have you been here today?
For an hour or two.
And were you here earlier this afternoon?
Yeah, well, I just gave a peek a little bit.
Okay, and so tell me what you take away from today.
It was pretty peaceful from what I've seen. You know, it's, I know a lot of the other cities are looking real rowdy, but it was pretty peaceful out here.
And what'd you make? Why'd you come out personally to be a part of this?
I just wanted to, show my appreciation for my community and show our solidarity that, we stand against, violence from the police and stuff like that.
And what do you think makes Houston different, that we're not ending the same way that so many cities across America are, with tear gas flying, rubber bullets flying, flashbang grenades moving protesters back? What's different here?
I think it's like Texas culture. We're, in the South, we're more peaceful people in the South too. So, Texas, and we're not really here to fight people. We're just here, just to show our solidarity. That's why.
Let's hope.
Just like a culture type of thing.
Thanks so much for coming out, man.
No problem.
I appreciate it. So this hill, by the way, this afternoon, at least at 2 o'clock, for people who weren't here, the 60,000 people who were a part of this protest today filled this hill, filled all the way to the stage in Discovery Green, and kept coming for hours down from Discovery Green towards City Hall. And so I think this night ends with a solid line of blue in front of our convention center. I think the overarching picture today is a solid wall of Houstonians marching towards City Hall to demand change in a very peaceful march. We'll see what the night brings, but so far, so good, fingers crossed.
All right, Ted, thanks so much. And just very much like Ted, ABC 13's Jessica Willey was also out there last Friday night. She has been covering the march all day today as well. Let's check in with Jessica. Jessica, what are you seeing tonight? And especially if you could compare it to what we saw on Friday.
Yeah, Lisa, we're on the north side of Discovery Green, and I just want to give you a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on with as far as police go. They are here at the park trying to clear the park, and with a show of force, hoping that people just see this as a deterrent and go home. They really just want people to go home. They want them to be safe, get home safely after an incredible day of unity and huge crowds here in downtown Houston. But the message right now is for people to be deterred from any kind of clashes with the police, which we have seen very few of, and just to go home. We see the HPD helicopter above shining the spotlight. We have seen some of the remaining marchers, running through the park as that happens. And then here, the Harris County Sheriff's Office detention officers, they are holding a line and kind of flushing people through the park with other law enforcement closer to the GRB, as you saw from Marla and Ted. In comparison to Friday, no comparison. This is much different. I mean, it was a much bigger scale than what we saw on Friday. Then it was maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people. Today, of course, we're talking 60,000 people. There are some stragglers now, people still hanging out, perhaps waiting to see what happens. On Friday, this is when we saw a lot of activity. When night fell, as we went into the night hours, we saw lots of running through downtown streets and police, and this cat and mouse game, if you will, with protesters and police officers as they tried to box them in, round them up, and then eventually encourage them to go home. Of course, 400 plus arrests over the weekend. This is nothing like that. We haven't seen any arrests today. I'm sure there have been some, but we have not seen any, and we have been here since 2 o'clock this afternoon. Elisa?
Jessica, thanks so much. And of course, our own Steve Campion. In all of our news live shots, we have seen the police, of course, but Steve Campion has been with Houston's top cop through much of this afternoon. Good evening to you, Steve. You were with Art Acevedo as he made his way through the streets of downtown.
Absolutely, Elisa. Good evening to you. I think it's safe to say that Chief Art Acevedo wanted to send a message to demonstrators on behalf of the Houston Police Department that they wanted to give them space to voice their frustrations, their outrage about policing in America in 2020. And we really saw this over the weekend and really today especially. Chief Acevedo, he really was on the front lines of this. He was speaking with demonstrators one-on-one with them in the crowds, at times surrounded by demonstrators, listening to them. His police officers were half a block away at some point. And I want you to take a look at this moment that we were able to capture earlier. This is Chief Acevedo essentially praying with one of the demonstrators out here.
I ask that you please, Father, because it cannot be done by man himself, Father, as you can see. Clearly, man is not capable of fixing this issue on his own. So I ask that you come upon us, Father, and that you correct this situation, that you make all things right as they're intended to be.
And let's be real honest about this. Demonstrators were frank with Chief Acevedo. They were yelling at him at times, and really it seemed like from the top down they were really trying to take a method of de-escalating anything, trying to listen to people. And again, I want you to hear what some of the chief had to say.
And in Houston, we want to work constructively, not destructively. And most importantly, this department has a relationship with this community. We may have our ups and downs like any other relationship, but this community knows we care. We've proven it time and again. I asked my people what's going on. There's a white naked guy messing up out there, and I said he's going to jail. And I went because I knew that he was jacking up the crowd. And we're not going to let them go. It's our city! Don't let them take it!
So, Lisa, you could hear the emotion, the raw emotion out here from demonstrators and the chief of police of, let's remember this, America's 4th largest city, speaking one-on-one with demonstrators. Here on Rust, you can see there is still a heavy police presence out here on the north side of the Marriott Marquis, so about a block north of Discovery Green, where Jessica Willey was. And if we'll flip this around, you might be able to see the tail end of some demonstrators out there. They have been walking north. So it seems from our vantage point out here that this crowd that has gathered throughout the day and really built into thousands of people have started to disperse out here. So we're going to stay out here. We're going to keep you posted, but it certainly it feels calm out here this evening. Reporting live in downtown Houston, Steve Campion, 13 Eyewitness News.
Steve, thank you for that. And yes, Sky Eye 13 still over the scene. Dallas and LaBranch will continue to monitor the situation for you throughout the hour and the evening. But we are first at 9 with your 3-day forecast, which includes keeping an eye on the tropics. Chief Forecaster David Tillman, you've been busy today too, David, in the Weather Center with your own work.
Yeah, Cristobal has had me a little busy there, Lisa. Been following aircraft reconnaissance today. They found a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm this evening that's still drifting south towards Mexico. So it's going to be quite some time before it makes it into the northern Gulf, but we still believe that will happen. It won't happen over the next 3 days. A passing disturbance will give us scattered storms tomorrow, isolated storms Thursday and Friday with hot weather. And then as we head into the weekend, all eyes will be on the Gulf of Mexico. I'll have the latest track up next in weather.
Thanks, David. Ahead at 9, we are learning more about where George Floyd grew up. See how his friends in the 3rd Ward are honoring him and what they have to say about today's march. Sky 13 is over downtown Houston tonight. Our own Don Armstrong in the air to let us know what's happening. We see with these final groups of people that hopefully, Don, are leaving downtown.
Lisa, these are the people that left Discovery Green, and they came down this street, Polk Street, and they're heading into the heart of downtown. However, they've made a left turn here on Caroline, and they're just kind of roaming around the downtown area. There's the South Texas College of Law building, if you're familiar with the downtown layout. They'll run down the street, and then they'll make a turn. It seems like they just go wherever they want to go. I know that the police were trying to corral these group of protesters. They have not been able to do so. They left Discovery Green and now heading out to the southwest out of the downtown Houston area. We're going to keep an eye on this and report any changes to you and let you know where they're going. Reporting live from Sky, Don Armstrong, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Don, thank you. Houston uniting as one today as thousands of people turned out for the demonstration in memory of Houston native George Floyd. ABC 13's Roxy Bustamante with the powerful moments from earlier today and that march through downtown.
About a dozen protesters locking arms and taking a knee in front of a line of officers in a peaceful protest.
We're showing that there are more people out here that are not just trying to loot and destroy America. We got people actually that want to change and actually want something better than what's going on.
A college student prays with a white man. It's a moment that brought the student to tears.
I'm going to continue to educate the youth and do what I can and be the part of the change I want to see.
A community calling for change, side by side, in the name of George Floyd. People of all ages and all races standing together as one. Houston strong.
I loved it. It was peaceful, it was calm, it was inspiring. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, amazing, her speech. It really was empowering. I think I'm going to take this experience, go out into the world and do something better for my fellow man.
Roxy Bustamante, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
And meteorologist and chief forecaster David Tillman has a lot of work ahead of him this week. We are watching a tropical storm. David, where is it now, and what are we looking for in the forecast here?
It is way down there in the Bay of Campeche right now, Elisa, and is drifting south. It's actually drifting in the opposite direction of where we are, so that lets you know that we've got a lot of time to watch this system, and it won't be until the second half of the weekend when it might have an impact on us. Here's a look at where it is right now. You see it way down there, and it's drifting slowly south. We do see some decent thunderstorms wrapping around the center. You need that for it to be a tropical storm, and that's what we have. Hurricane hunters flew into it this evening and found 45-mile-per-hour winds. They also found a lower pressure. The lower the pressure, the stronger the storm, and then it's moving to the south at 3. Here's the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. Has it meandering around parts of Mexico, just west of the Yucatan Peninsula, through Friday evening, and then trough of low pressure is going to pick it up and lift it to the north towards the Gulf Coast. Now, where does it go? Well, the center of the track is going into south central Louisiana, but notice how the west side of the track is kind of pointing towards us here along the upper Texas coast. Now, if the center were to go inland in Louisiana, we would probably feel very little effect from the system because we're going to be on the clean side. Most of the rain will be on the other side. But if the center were to track a little farther to the west, then, of course, we would have a better chance of seeing some heavy rain and wind around here. Tropical computer models are basically saying just about the same thing, that this thing will, in about 5 days, be somewhere along the Gulf Coast, but it's just really hard to know exactly where it's going to be. Now, assuming it does take that track towards south central Louisiana, this computer model is putting most of the heavy rain in Louisiana and east into parts of Florida, with very little around here, only about an inch or maybe 2 around southeast Texas. Again, if the center does come more towards us, then some of that heavy rain could be in southeast Texas, and it's just a little bit too early to know for sure what is going to happen. Things are calm outside right now. It's 81 degrees here in Houston, 82 degrees in Galveston right now. Future track shows that we could see an isolated shower or 2 overnight. Then as we go through the day tomorrow, passing disturbance will give us a better chance for widely scattered thunderstorms, especially during the afternoon. By the time we get to 6 p.m., we'll begin to see those thunderstorms weaken out there, and by the time we get to tomorrow night at this time, they should be completely gone. 30% tomorrow. High pressure builds in Thursday and Friday. That means fewer storms, 20%. Highs make it back to the low 90s. Then as we head into the weekend, we'll be watching the Gulf of Mexico. If the system tracks to our east, we'll lower these rain chances. If it tracks more in our direction, we'll be raising the rain chances.
David, thank you. Up next, an update from Minneapolis. One former officer charged in George Floyd's death, but will others be charged as well? The state of Minnesota is filing a human rights complaint against the Minneapolis Police Department in connection with George Floyd's death. Governor Tim Walz says the state knows there are deep-seated issues right now, and those issues must be addressed in order for there to be change.
We're not going to restore peace on our streets by having a bigger group of National Guard show up. We're not going to establish peace on our streets by keeping a curfew in place all the time. We're going to establish peace on our streets when we address the systemic issues that caused it in the first place.
A spokesperson for the police department did not comment. The Minnesota Attorney General told ABC News that prosecutors are trying to determine if more charges will be filed in the case. Protests across the nation have turned violent tonight. 6 police officers in Atlanta are facing charges for forcefully pulling 2 college students out of a car. Prosecutors say those officers smashed the windows and then used a stun gun in the course of making those arrests. One of the students spoke on GMA this morning. The driver, Messiah Young, says he was in that car with his girlfriend in the passenger seat, or his girlfriend was in the passenger seat, rather. Body camera footage shows Young videotaping as officers' encounter with the protesters in the street became violent. Young says he tried to convince officers to let the protester into his car, but it all escalated.
I feel a little safer now that these monsters are off of the street and no longer able to terrorize anyone else from this point on.
As we mentioned tonight, all 6 officers are facing charges, aggravated assault, among other charges. 2 have been let go from the force. And we are catching up with the man who helped organize today's march in Houston for George Floyd. Still ahead, Trey the Truth shares his message with Houston.
And we've got plenty of time to watch the tropics, so why don't we play a little golf tomorrow, Lisa? If you're going to be teeing off in the morning, you'll be out there with temperatures in the 70s. It'll be warm and humid. Then we warm up to around 90 degrees tomorrow afternoon. There will be that 30% rain chance. We'll talk more about crystal ball coming up later in weather.